Hi, and welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast, also streamed on Expert CRE Secrets, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to defer capital gains taxes on the sale of businesses or real estate, cryptocurrency, so you can create and preserve more wealth. Hey, I'm your host, Brett Swarts, and each episode I'm joined by some of the best real estate, financial, cryptocurrency, and sometimes commercial real estate syndicators in the world where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He is out of the great state of Florida, and he's wrestled alligators professionally, fought fires, delivered babies, saved lives, built and sold companies, and he has failed and pivoted more than most. He's worked with sharks, and by that he means venture capitalist, and it was one of the first to build an online group fitness company. He built and scaled a network and co-working studios in partnership with local municipalities, and he built and sold podcasts and media brands, all kinds of stuff, and so much more. And we're going to be talking real estate, branding, becoming an entrepreneur. Please welcome to the show with me, Josh Wilson. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Hey, Brett. Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your background and your current focus?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of writing a book right now. It's called Josh the Failure. I've failed and pivoted more than most, and that kind of is a part of my story. I've lost all my money multiple times. It seems like I lost all my money around anytime I had a kid. I have 3 kids. So I've had about 3 financial collapses in my life. And I just kind of share the story of entrepreneurship. We have a bunch of podcast shows and media brands in our network, and I believe that there's a story behind the deal maker, and the most important investment is obviously in yourself, but also in the relationships that you build. So those are kind of things I like to talk about on my shows and through my brokerage and through the deals that I do.
Fantastic. And for our listeners also getting to know you for the first time, you see, I believe, even me, I'm still getting to know you. I was on your podcast, which was a lot of fun, by the way.
Yeah.
And we almost met in person when I went to Jacksonville a few weeks ago, but the lines didn't quite line up. But I want you to go back to your high school days, your earlier days, right? Younger Josh.
Yeah.
I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given us to be a blessing and help to others. Some people call them strengths, some people call them superpowers. So I'm curious, what are those 1 or 2 gifts that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
Yeah, great question, Brett. So I moved to Ocala from Fort Lauderdale, which is, near the beaches and near Miami and, the hustle bustle of kind of a bigger city. And I moved to Ocala, which is a small horse country, county. And it was very interesting. I moved as a freshman in high school. So I moved to this place. I didn't know anybody. I wore, board shorts, flip flops, and, a silk shirt. And I was in a high school with a bunch of cowboys and with a bunch of, big up, jacked up pickup trucks and such like that. And to be honest, I did not fit. But one of the superpowers that I think God's blessed me with is the ability to, fit in any group. So, throughout my time, I was a small guy, but I found my place on a wrestling mat. And I don't like talking about this because it's kind of like, I don't want to be ego, but like I made a lot of friends. I wound up becoming, they designated me the most popular kid in the school. So not growing up here, knowing nobody, to being most popular. Now as a teenager, that's cool because you can, meet a lot of people, have a lot of fun, and, people like that. But, fast forward what that parlays into business, and after a little bit of maturity and a lot of failure, is knowing, the ability to connect people, and then knowing the ability to put deals together and see people for their value, and, parlaying into different groups, whether it's an investment group over here, an entrepreneurial group over here, or maybe a group that, nobody's paying attention to over here. So I think that's how I bless people, is by seeing them and then finding out what they need.
I love that, man. It's like whatever like your wife wants you to say, right? I hear you and I see you, right? It's something I try to practice to say. She's telling me something and I got to digest it a little bit. And sometimes she says it to me too. She's like, I hear you and I see you. So if I'm hearing you right, Josh, you're saying you can hear and connect with people in an authentic way and make friends quickly. Is that a fair summary so far?
Yeah. I've never met a stranger. Like I said, there's probably some skill set level in here, but I think it's the way that God wired me together. He's like, Josh is going to be extremely extroverted. He's never met a stranger. Everyone from billionaire, I have, friends that are billionaires to homeless people, right? Everyone, I love people. And that happens so that I love deals and business. So it makes connecting and syndication fun.
It's fantastic. And that's where we're talking about Kingdom Commercial Real Estate Syndications or syndicate investing right now. So Josh, what's the best kept secret to commercial real estate syndications or syndicates, the way that, and how would you define that? Because I don't want to also put that in a box, right? It could be brokerage, it could be networks, it could be brands, right? So define that for us, and then we'll also get into the commercial real estate side of things.
Yeah. So when I started in real estate, I grew up on a construction site with my dad, right? So swinging hammers and, working in the summers, I was the cheap labor, right? So my dad gave me a post hole digger. I got my PhD and I learned how to dig footers and swing hammers. And it was a tough job. And I remember at a young age, I just felt like my mission was to, help my dad, everybody has daddy and mommy issues. And one of my things was I wanted to make dad proud, but I also wanted to help his business. So I read a bunch of business books as a young kid. But, I saw these people. I'm working, for an hourly wage in the Florida sun, floating trusses or, roofing. And then a Lexus would drive up. They would put a sign in the front yard and drive off. And they were making more money than me. So I said, who are they and what are they doing? And I found out they're in real estate. They're selling what all the hard work that we did. So at a young age, I got my real estate license. And I found that, especially in Central Florida, there's, you could have $1 million house next to a mobile home. There's some interesting, areas. And I just found that I didn't really work well with the residential world, listing a home for, Grandma Susie and then showing it to 100 people and then getting, a $300 commission check wasn't for me. So I started working with investors. And this is where I learned a little bit about what it means to be a syndicator, what it means to be a networker, a connector. Because a lot of times I would go and I would get my own deals and then I would syndicate the deal out, right? So I'd find a deal, I'd lock it up, and then I would wind up selling the deal to an investor or an investment group. And I just found that it was so much easier and fun, more fun to work with a group that was buying 10 to 20 properties a year rather than, this churn and burn of trying to list the property and, maybe, spend all my time to get a deal. And then, one deal, $300. I'd rather do 10 at a time. So I guess that's kind of how I got into real estate.
Cool. Let me connect the dots here. Okay. So you're on the job site. By the way, I had a similar story. I grew up in the Bay Area with my dad, custom homes, room additions. I was the guy, my brother and I were the guys who moved the bricks or moved the boards, right?
Yeah.
Or hammered the random nails or, whatever. He'd say, whatever you do, don't move bricks twice. Like make sure you have a plan, a process for what you're doing, right? And drywall. And Ryan, I remember my brother's driving the Bobcat and he's like tipping over a side. He almost like tipped the whole thing over on a big ditch he was digging. But you're sitting there and you're like, wait, we've been working 8, 9, 10-hour days. That person just drove up for a few minutes, put a sign out front. And how much are they making? And you're going like, oh my gosh, okay. A, and then B, so you went to real estate. And then you also looked around and said, wait, there's also people putting these commercial real estate deals together. And how much are they making? Right? So in other words, you're connecting the dots and you're bringing people together to make sense of it. Is that a fair summary so far?
Yeah. So in a deal, there's a lot of people that play in the deal. And, what I found is I'm not a good manager. I don't have the highest attention to detail. I'm an extremely good networker and strategist when it comes to people and groups and what people are looking for. So I found my fit, in real estate. It was investors and, an opportunity and that parlayed into, spec houses. Not a good time to do it in 2006, but, we built a bunch of houses with, connecting the dots between investor and, builder and landowner. And, we put that whole process together and, we did pretty cool things by connecting the dots. And I stayed in my sweet spot, which was the connecting piece between all of them. And that was before I even knew what syndicating was, I was valet parking a car one time and I wound up introducing an investor to one of the projects that I was working on. So it's just putting people together is my superpower. Mm-hmm. And I
I
just
love it.
got to get out of the deal as quick as possible
Yeah.
because there's people better at it than me.
I love it. No, it's understanding your role, right? Knowing your role. I also think of the movie Office Space, right? Where they call the manager in and they're like doing the reviews and they're like, hey, so what would you say you do here? He goes, I'm a people person. He goes, well, what does that mean? I deal with the people. And they're like, what? So would you walk us through a day-to-day thing? You're like, yeah, the TPS report. So you physically take the TPS report to the customer. Well, sometimes, and of course that's, it's a hilarious movie if you've ever seen it, but you can't overstate the ability to connect with people, right? We connected about a month ago on a podcast. You're in Florida, I'm in California, right? And the ability to raise capital, to develop relationships, the know, like, and trust without having those, and then also finding each person, the operator, right? The person maybe is good working with the brokers, the person maybe good working with the investor relations, the person who doesn't ever want to talk to anybody. They're not a people person. They're the person doing the TPS report in the background, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really wise. So tell me, what was the hardest thing about getting it out of your own way as an entrepreneur and figuring that out?
I think knowing who you are, I think that is the hardest part because, you go through school, I get my bachelor's degree and I go to business school and they said, these are all the things you must be. Right. And, I'm looking at all these things and it's, I got to be good at finance and I got to be good at management, at property manager. And then I got to be good at, putting together the spreadsheet and then the marketing stuff. And I got overwhelmed. So I think the hardest part about getting into something is knowing your place and owning it. And then building, finding the best value output and who needs it. Right. So I ask myself 5 questions, or when I'm coaching a group or someone's asking me to put together a deal or connect them with capital or connect them with, opportunity. Right. So it's, who am I? Who do I serve? What do I do for them? And why do I do it? And there's one other question, but I won't bring that one into it. But so I think that's the hardest part is kind of knowing who you are. Because I think a lot of people don't spend the time trying to figure that out.
No, I think it's so true. It reminds me of the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and or just the traditional educational systems, right? Where we are taught to we need to get all of the grades and all of the subject, even if we loathe the subjects or they're just we're not very good at them, right? Like I wasn't great at Spanish. I could speak it okay, but I was terrible trying to dictate and go through. And I had a love and a passion for history and math, right? And not so much for science. That just wasn't the way I was kind of wired. But I think, knowing your place, right? Knowing where you're at. There's a formula that I've been meditating on, right? And it has to do with the fact that once you understand your strengths, right? Remember your God-given strengths you've been given, right? Or superpowers or strengths that you believe you have, times the maximizing the potential of that. So not just knowing your strengths, but then actually maximizing and working on those like a laser, focusing on like a laser to maximize them. Then the third thing is making impact for people. And then the bigger purpose is making a bigger impact that we're here for something more than just today or tomorrow or just our lifetime, right? Belief, for me, it's God, and belief in a higher power. So could you connect those two, words of knowing your strengths and then what do you do to maximize the potential there, and then also talk about how you're branding and building to help more people?
Brett, that's a good question. So it's easy. I've built 8 podcast shows, sold one. In the past, I've been doing this for a long time. I've had maybe 700 interviews in the past. I'm always a lot more comfortable when I'm asking the questions. So if you see me moving around a little bit, man, I'm nervous, to be honest. Most of the time I'm in the control seat where I'm interviewing other people. But, the question you asked is how do I maximize my God-given talents, right? So in the Bible, in the good book, it talks about, the master, he gives 5 talents to this person, 3 to this person and 1 to this person. And the way that I'm doubling in, that I go, I'm all in on my talent is, we invest in relationships. We have 3 podcast shows. I'm looking at my board. We have 3 podcast shows currently in production, looking at investing in a few others right now and a few other influencers to build out relationships and deal flow. We're going to do 500 interviews by August 22 of 2022, right? So we're pumping out 2 to 3 pieces of content every single day with influencers and interviews with deal makers. And then we have our impact show. So I'm all in on relationships. So I think that's how I'm diving in. On the impact side, some of the things that we do is we have a donor advised fund that we set aside some money to help support military, police, and fire, frontline workers and their families. We have what we call a Fergie fund. So we're raising, we set aside some money. We're not allowed to raise it, but we're setting aside some money for the family readiness group for my partner's wife who flies Blackhawks for the military. So we're, that's our impact side of things. And we have an impact show where we focus on men. It's called Uncensored Advice for Men. From porn stars to pastors, we ask, tough questions and kind of report back in the advice. So I'm all in on relationships and conversations with people.
Fantastic. By the way, you can learn more about Josh Wilson and his 3 podcasts and 500 episodes are going to be delivered by August of next year. We're going to hold you to that at kingdomsyndicate.com. That's kingdomsyndicate.com. So I think that's really, really neat, fascinating, and cool. And I think the thing that I pull out of that is the fact that you cleared your complete time schedule. Like you just said, you know what? Like to do 500 interviews by August on 3 different shows, obviously you got to be in front of the camera. You got to be on the mic. You got to be in the Zoom. You're in the first time in this Restream Room. And for those who are not watching it on YouTube, he's got his green in the back, but Restream, come on, pick up your game, Restream. They don't allow the green screen in the back, but that's really amazing. You said, look, I'm just going to burn the ships on everything else in a sense, right? Well, let's say everything else on my time and energy, on the focus on other things and just build relationships through the podcast. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is built around people, right? So with COVID happening last year, right? What happened is the face-to-face networkers, the face-to-face deal makers, and that world kind of went away fast. And everybody's scrambling to kind of figure it out. But people who have been building out their podcast brands and with their online positioning, like you, Brett, we're a little bit ahead of the game. We know how to build relationships with people virtually. We get to share that, and people are consuming content at a higher rate because they don't have the major commute to work. Maybe they're working from home, and people are looking to look outside of their corporate job because companies are shutting down or they're moving or they're changing their policies. So we have to be flexible. So content's powerful. Relationships and conversations are powerful. And if we can learn from other people, it's called wisdom. So that's why these shows are important.
Beautiful. Love it. So let's talk about some commercial real estate syndications, right? So maybe you can tell us about either a live deal or a recently passed deal.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Where are you buying? Why are you buying? What was the story? What was the value add play?
Yeah. So this is going to be, so we're probably not like a lot of syndicators, right? So we help put deals together for other people, and we try to get out like as quickly as possible and set up a referral relationship or agreement. One of our partners, they're a partner of our podcast and our brand and some of the things that we're doing. We've sent in $18 million worth of deals. So they do commercial real estate financing. So through our podcast shows, through the guests that we've interviewed, through the network, we've sent in 3 months, sent in $18 million worth of deals, right? Not all of them were closed, but that's like we became their outsourced or fractional, business development company. We have another company. This is not real estate related. So, I play a major piece in commercial real estate because it's a great investment asset, and we don't want to get into residential because I don't care if the color of the house is blue or red or whatever. It doesn't make money, right? That's why we like working with investors. But we also do this in business brokering and business investments. So we work with investment groups that are looking to find deal flow and such. So we have a group that we raise capital with. They set up this structure, this vehicle, and we've become their top salesperson through our podcast show. So they love us, and we're opening up things and maybe even raise a fund ourselves to buy some tech companies and such like that.
Awesome. Okay, got it. So now I'm taking this stuff. So it's referring and introducing and bringing the relationship, and you're not necessarily the operations on the ground. Again, you're sticking to you're sticking to your strengths, right? And becoming because a lot of people operations on the ground, they don't have the podcast or the connections or the outreach or the technology or all of that. They're focused on hammering the nail, right, and clearing the landfill entitlements to get the ground broken on the deal, right?
Yeah, good on them. Go for it, guys. Like
exactly.
If they're really great operators, like we work with some, mobile home park investors, right? Mm-hmm. Like go for it. If you like doing self-storage or mobile home parks or manufacturing, distribution, that's great. Everyone needs investment. Everyone needs capital, and not everybody knows how to, smile and dial or jump on a, on a call to present the deal. Not everybody could do that. Not everybody has the connection. So know your lane, have fun in it, own it, and keep learning, try to get better at it. Cause this is someone that said the other day, they go, wow, Josh, you're really good at this one little sliver. I go, that's all I'm good at, this one little piece.
Absolutely love it, right? So now let's talk about the Deferred Sales Trust, right?
Yep.
I came on your show, and so the premise that I really believe in the Deferred Sales Trust. We believe it's the number one way to raise capital for business ventures or commercial real estate syndications, all tax deferred, right? Especially from ultra high net worth individuals who are selling, and especially with the demographics and the baby boomers who are selling and looking to retire and be a little more passive, right? And aren't necessarily as excited about the stock market per se. And so you can sell, defer, it works for cryptocurrency too. That's also a thing. Like cryptocurrency folks, they're excited about real estate typically, or at least like some real estate. They're not as excited about the stock market. So what is your take so far on the Deferred Sales Trust as a way to defer capital gains tax and then be able to fund opportunities?
So there's this thing called the Seller Tsunami. You call it the Silver Tsunami when you came on my show. Brilliant, by the way. So there's going to be the largest transfer of wealth that has already been initiated from the baby boomers that came back from World War II, and they started building businesses, and they all these really incredible things. Or actually, they came back, had babies, and those baby boomers are building business. Those businesses, what's happening with those? All of that wealth, all of those things. What is happening with that? So a lot of people are holding on to their business because they're looking at the local administration. They're looking at, tax consequences. Their job is a part of their identity. So they're holding on, right? So the DST, from my understanding of it, this is such a great way where they can still have that transfer of wealth. And maybe their kid, isn't suited to, run their business, but so they can have an exit event and then maybe explore some other things, or maybe invest in their kids, using this. So I think that it's a really interesting tool that we're trying to add that to our tool belt of opportunities, because a lot of people, one of their fears of selling, and one of our partners is, a very large M&A group, like this is now a new tool that we could bring in for sellers who do want to move on and do something else with their life, invest this money into charity or a business or something that they're passionate about, right? So I think it's pretty cool, especially with the Silver Tsunami, which I learned that from you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. And we couldn't agree more. And that's part of why we call this part of the segment of the show, the biggest frustration with capital gains tax deferral on the 1031 exchange, right? There's different tools to fit different time periods and different generations and different needs. And guess what? I always call the 1031, it's like the hammer. And the hammer can work for a long time. But sometimes, Josh, you're on the job site and you need that screwdriver, right? You need something that's a little more, it's going to do a different thing in a different way. And I like to call the Deferred Sales Trust the Swiss Army knife, right? Because you can't really put it in a box that it works for any asset that you're selling. It can save a failed 1031 exchange. It works for general partners getting out of a syndication. You can reinvest the funds into another syndication. You can put it in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You can do ground up development. It works for cryptocurrency. So there's so many aspects to this. The question is for the listener, like, what are you trying to accomplish? And then just figure out which tool is going to help you get you there, right? And sometimes we're doing even like a partial 1031, partial deferred sales trust, even a partial Delaware statutory trust, or a partial opportunity zone, right? So don't put yourself in a box. Figure out what you're trying to accomplish, and then go there. Any thoughts on that, Josh?
Brad, you're a sharp guy. I don't know
you.
if I saw that. You're a sharp guy. Like you've really captured this niche. You really own this space. Like you are really good.
Thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind. You're too kind. Yeah, we're on a mission to help a lot of people. We saw a lot of pain in 08, right? People had overpaid. And I literally went with a guy in 06. He told him to sell because the market was so high. He had $50 million of apartment complexes, right? He had a lot of debt. He was doing all these 1031s, living in this huge, like $2 million mansion, all these cars. And let's just say he was spending too much, but he had too much debt. We told him to sell. He didn't sell, and he lost everything, went bankrupt, right? Mm-hmm. But part of that, we went back and we talked to him. He said, hey, it's because I didn't want to pay the capital gains tax. And I felt like I had to chase the next deal. And this is where the Deferred Sales Trust can alleviate that pressure and give you time flexibility. So it's because of the pain, Josh, that I have the passion, right? And I think that's part of life, right? I imagine part of your passion for what you do is because of some of the pain and challenges you had to overcome. So what's been the single biggest thing that you have had to overcome to become where you're at today?
Yeah. So in the story, there's a lot of failures, right? And a lot of it is lack of confidence or lack of self-worth or identity issues, right? So there's a lot of things. I think the hardest thing is it's a mental game, man. It's like I am my own worst enemy, and I think that is one of the hardest things that I struggle with and that I have struggled with is this identity piece. And I talk about it a lot when I coach a younger guy or maybe a little less experienced person. Is the identity piece is so important because once you kind of start working those in and focus in on your strengths, and then not being afraid to talk about your weaknesses and not being afraid to ask for help or bring someone in. I think most entrepreneurs are a little wired, like me, who are hard drivers that are, outward appearance of, ego and confidence, but inside, we're trying to prove something to others and we're trying to find our fit. So I think if the hardest thing to do for entrepreneurs, and then this just being real is, is just finding our lane, really believing in what our mission is and diving into it.
Beautiful, Josh. Thanks so much for sharing. That being said, we're running out of time. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Oh, God. This makes me nervous. Sure.
All right. Knowing what you know now, if you go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you'd make sure to tell yourself to do?
Duck. No. So 25-year-old self, I would say you got to chase, you got to go with your gut on where you think God's calling you, and you got to go down that path, because I took a bunch of different windy paths to get me to the place. If you would have asked me at 18, what's your goals in life? It would have been doing what I'm doing now. But I had to, because I did trust my gut. I trust other people who weren't necessarily bought into who I was. They were just trying to fit me into a educational piece of go to school, get your degree, go work at a corporation or the government for 30 years, get out. That's not me. So I would say trust your gut, know who you are, dive in, trust God that he's going to walk you through it.
Awesome. This is part of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a part of the lightning round. So out of that, Robert Kiyosaki's amazing book, what's the number one thing that you try to implement in your business and your life with that book?
Yeah. So I keep on looking at my daily mission, my daily task, and I'm looking at on the ESBI quadrants, like where did these activities, where will they land me? And, if I'm looking at that stuff, I'm going, this is an employee task. This is a self-employed task, right? I need to be focusing on building assets and building the business, right? And that's where I am constantly trying to push myself to the, the B and the I side of the quadrants.
Fantastic. Next question. What are you most curious about right now?
Good question. Most curious about. Yeah, I think capital raising for equity pieces. So we're working with local legislation, for the state of Florida, and for some investment groups and such who are asking me to go knock on doors for capital. So I think the most interesting thing is how do I do it in a way that is clear cut in the guidelines, but how do I be the best at it? How do I be the best capital formation person that this world's ever seen, right? So I think I'm most curious about how the movement of money.
Cool. Love that. Yeah. Last question. After all your success and all the podcasts and all the people and raising all the capital and everything you've accomplished, how do you stay centered in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new heights?
Yeah. How do I stay centered? Well, I mean, I got tattoos that remind me. I got tattoos and scars that remind me of my mission and my past mistakes. So I think those are good. I think my wife's really quick to remind me too, the past failures. And I think that, in our humble position of we've been bankrupt. I've been on food stamps. I've worked in venture capital one day and, was, selling roofs door to door the next. I've worked at moving companies to put, diapers on my baby's butts. So it's like, I've hit highs, I've hit lows. And I think the most important thing, no matter where I'm at, if I can believe that God has me here for a purpose and I'm here to help and bless people, then I think that's how I get centered. Because listen, man, you and I both know, extremely wealthy people and they have very similar problems that me, just different, So I think being centered is if we all walked into a room and threw our problems on the table, and our problems and our blessings, we'd probably want to scoop up our own problems and blessings and walk out of the room with them. So I think being just transparent too with people, not posturing and just going, man, you know, I've been there. I've hit rock bottom, and I thought about swan diving off a bridge because of it. But that doesn't make me who I am. I didn't, and I moved forward, and that's, I'm trying. I'm working hard. I'm trying.
That's beautiful, Josh. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for being an entrepreneur, chasing your dreams, right? Pushing through all the challenges. I want to encourage you to keep using the gift of connecting and making friends. I think you definitely made a friend of me, and I imagine our listeners too are thinking, "Hey, I like this Josh guy. I just like this Josh guy." And you should find him, by the way, at a place called KingdomSyndicate.com. That's KingdomSyndicate.com. Josh Wilson, thanks for being on the show. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening to the episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is a great way to defer your capital gains tax, cryptocurrency, business, primary home, so you can create and preserve more wealth or help your clients do the same. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn all about that. And if you're also checking this out on Expert CRE Secrets, where we are helping commercial real estate brokers level up their business, you can also go and learn more about that at expertcrsecrets.com. Hey, thanks everyone for listening and watching, and please